Thanks, Bill, for your introduction and facilitation of this an excellent session. I am the last speaker, and you are also waiting for the conclusion of the first day. And I was thinking whether you will be actually ready for the final presentation or you will be feeling impatient. So I have a solution for you here. What I would like is that if each one of you could consider yourself as a person responsible for developing a greenhouse gas inventory, at least of your own home, and use that as a basis to look at my presentation. And I think that will at least help create some interest. Of course, this presentation is primarily focused on businesses, but I think the same concepts in a simplified form can also be applied in your own personal context. And I can also actually imagine a future where right now of course, every year we do our financial accounts and we do our tax accounts. But I'm sure there will be a future where we might be also keeping a worksheet at our home computers to undertake our carbon accounts. And so it may not be that far, but at least at this point, let me take you through these concepts and try to conclude this as early as possible. What I'm going to do is cover four different parts in this presentation. My first component will include introduction to basic concepts. The second part will cover the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Initiative, which is the backbone of most of the greenhouse gas programs worldwide and also business inventory systems. Then my third part will look into a brief overview of steps on how do you do a greenhouse gas inventory, what does it involve, and finally I'll share some thoughts on a new greenhouse gas protocol standard that will focus on products and supply chain accounting. Now this is a basic concept, very simple, and a simple principle here that what you measure you can manage, and what you measure well you can manage well. So throughout the presentation, this is the model that I have applied here and that I might be referring back to. The first key thing that is essential to undertake a good measurement is good measurement methodologies. And from that perspective, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Initiative has, in the last 8 to 10 years, has developed a series of standards which have become a global standard or a global best practice on how do you quantify your emissions. So you use the standards to measure your footprint, and then the measurement itself is not an end goal. What you're trying to achieve here is management of emissions. And by management, it could mean a range of things. In our previous presentations, we've seen how in different ways, different concepts and measurements and measures are being considered and applied by businesses worldwide. So the purpose of measurement is ultimately to achieve effective management. And that is also the concept in the design of these standards. These standards have been designed to serve particular objectives, and we will see that how these standards can be used for different types of objectives. First of all, I would like you to understand what is meant by a carbon footprint. This is the term that has now become a very commonly used concept, but still there is a lot of confusion, I think, concerning what is the definition, what is the meaning of this concept. Now, those who are experts on inventories will recognize that there are different types of inventories. One is called source level inventory. For example, you have a computer, and so it is a kind of a source. It's just a single source. So if you are measuring its electricity use and you quantify that, so that becomes a source level inventory for your computer. Then there is a facility level inventory, there is a corporate level inventory, and there is a national level inventory. I have not mentioned here product level inventory, but that is also a concept that I think is now going to become very important, and companies are increasingly focusing on that. Now, how are these different types of inventories are connected? So in this diagram, you can see that a source level inventory can be a building block for a facility level inventory. So if in this particular facility, if you were to do the inventory of the whole building, then you would perhaps have to measure impact at the source level. Now, there could be a measurement of the impact at the facility level directly also, but I think source level information in some form will serve as a building block. And then the facility level inventory can become a building block of a corporate level inventory. Now the key point here is that as a person responsible for doing GHG quantification, you will perhaps encounter two different types of methodologies. One is a source level quantification methodology, and the second is corporate level quantification methodology. And it's very important to remember the difference, because sometimes you do not even need to use corporate level methodology. You have to use corporate level methodology only when you are combining emissions from a large number of facilities to create one single number for a large company. And in the GHG protocol, corporate standard actually has been designed and works on the basis of some key financial accounting principles. But it also uses the calculation tools, which are the source level quantification methodologies. Now, in the last 10 years, the greenhouse gas protocol, which is the basic framework here that provides measurement methodologies, in the last 10 years, it has produced two major series of standards. The first one is focused on corporate accounting and reporting, and the second one is focused on project accounting and reporting. Now, at the same time, now we are working on a third series of standards, which we've just initiated the process, and that will provide guidelines on how do you quantify a product level carbon footprint. Now, in this particular presentation, I will provide you some information on the GHG protocol corporate standard, which is the most widely used international accounting tool for governments and business leaders to understand, quantify, and manage energy use and GHG emissions. Now, this standard has been adopted by a range of international initiatives, and the purpose of this slide is to show that how this has become a global standard. And if you were to do a GHG inventory, you would want to follow a standard that is also implemented by other programs, so that you have a consistent and consistent data set that can actually serve multiple objectives. If you would like to report to multiple programs, just by using GHG protocol, you can actually slice and dice your information and serve different types of programs and applications. This is another slide to show that how very important initiatives are using the greenhouse gas protocol as a basic framework. Now, in terms of developing a climate strategy, I think this slide is important to illustrate that monitoring and reporting has to be pursued in a specific context. So if you are doing a corporate level climate strategy, you have to understand what is your business context, what kind of business objectives you are trying to address, and then design your monitoring and reporting system. And then after completing your monitoring and reporting will come a range of steps and measures that I won't get into the details, but will be very important. So again, there are different stages in the development of a greenhouse gas inventory, and that is shown here. In terms of the bigger steps, I think the most important step here is establishing the boundary of your company and defining what are your direct impacts and what are your indirect impacts as you quantify your emissions. Now, without getting into the details, the corporate accounting standard that is provided by GHG protocol is a very comprehensive system, and it provides accounting methodologies on a range of issues and steps. And I've just given a quick overview here, but it's very important to understand these before you start implementing the framework. And all these calculation tools that are mentioned here are provided on the GHG protocol website, www.ghgprotocol.org. Now, I'll just skip to a very important point here. This is the slide I would like you to focus on. In terms of the information and communication technology sector, the most important thing I think is to develop a framework, a protocol that is comprehensive in terms of what we call scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions. It's a complete life cycle framework, and in fact, I think for most IT companies, the majority of emissions will come from what is called scope 3 in GHG protocol. Again, this is another way to look at the different scopes. So scope 1 and 2 are scope 1 and 2 define emissions from your own operations. Scope 1 defines emissions that are called direct emissions, and scope 2 defines indirect emissions from use of electricity in your own operations. And scope 3 covers all other indirect emissions that are upstream and downstream of a company's value chain. Now, the GHG protocol, in addition to the standard that I've just shown you, a quick overview, also includes a range of calculation tools. And I think from the perspective of ICT sector, as you can see, I think there will be a specific package of tools that will be important and relevant for the ICT sector. And I think as we have worked in the case of other industry sectors, they have used the GHG protocol and then they have customized it to define a sector level protocol. And I think ICT sector also needs to do that, because that way you can customize many of the accounting approaches that are provided in the GHG protocol, and you can provide more specific guidance to companies who will be using the GHG protocol for their emissions in the ICT sector. And so I would hope that this is one of the things that from this conference can be one of the next steps. Now, final part of my presentation, as I've said earlier, that we are now working on the third series of standard, which will focus on product and supply chain accounting. And as you can see in this slide, the product standard will, if it is a full life cycle standard, it will help companies to do product labeling. Or if it is focused only on a specific set of emissions in the supply chain, then it can help address many other objectives. Now, so as a conclusion, what I would like to say is that this is a very important standard that is being developed by GHG protocol, and I would hope that the ICT sector will also become involved in this sector, because I think from the perspective of ICT sector, actually this will be a more important standard. And I think based on your experience and knowledge and specific issues, it will be very important to influence the direction of this new standard. And so if you would like to participate and join, I would suggest that you visit the GHG protocol website, or you could contact me after the session, or you could send an email also to us. Thank you very much.